The sun burned hot over the streets of Kifaru, where life moved fast and loud. Cars honked, traders shouted, and people hurried through the dusty roads. Yet among the noise sat Amara, a young girl with tired eyes and a heart that refused to give up. Her small shelter made of wood and torn cloth stood near the old bridge. Each morning she roasted maize on a rusty metal tray, hoping to earn a few coins before night came. Her hands were rough from work, and her dress had lost all color, but her spirit was not broken. When people passed by, she smiled and greeted them politely, even when they ignored her. Some laughed at her, others looked away. But Amara always said, "One day the wind will change." Those words were her hope, her silent prayer. That afternoon, dark clouds began to gather. The city was busy as usual, but Amara's small fire still burned beside the road. Suddenly, a black car sped past, splashing muddy water all over her and her maize. Her little fire went out and her coins rolled into the mud. She gasped and stood up, trying to save what was left. The car stopped and a man stepped out, tall, neatly dressed, wearing a fine watch and polished shoes. It was Mr. Juma, a well-known businessman who owned a chain of supermarkets in Kifaru. People spoke his name with respect, but also with fear. He was known to be proud and strict, a man who had no time for street people. When he saw the mess he had made, he frowned and said, "I am sorry, young lady. I didn't see the puddle." Amara wiped her face with her sleeve and looked up at him. Her eyes, though tired, shone with kindness. "It is just water, sir," she said softly, "no harm done." Juma stared at her, surprised. He expected anger, shouting, maybe even insults. But instead she smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Something about her calmness stayed with him. He took out some money from his wallet and tried to give it to her, but she shook her head. "No, sir. You did not mean it. Keep it. Maybe next time drive slowly," she said with a playful grin. For a moment Juma didn't know what to say. People rarely spoke to him that way, with honesty but without fear. He got back into his car, but as he drove away, her words echoed in his mind. "It is just water, sir." That night, Juma sat in his large house on the hill. His table was full of food, but he had no appetite. He kept thinking about the girl by the bridge, her smile, her voice, her refusal to take his money. He wondered how someone with so little could still be so content. Meanwhile, Amara sat under her shelter, roasting the few pieces of maize that survived. She hummed a small song her mother had taught her long ago before she was gone. The road was quiet now, and the city lights flickered in the distance. She didn't know that the man she had met that day would soon change her life, and that her kindness would touch a heart she never expected to reach. As the night wind passed through the city, it carried a faint sound of her song, gentle, hopeful, and full of dreams that refused to die. The morning sun rose softly over Kifaru, painting the streets golden as the city came alive once again. Traders opened their stalls, buses honked, and the smell of roasted maize filled the air. Amara was already at her usual spot near the old bridge, her small fire glowing, her basket full of maize. Despite her hard life, she began each day with a thankful heart. She greeted everyone who passed, offering a smile along with her food. That same morning Mr. Juma was driving to one of his supermarkets. He had tried to forget the girl from the other day, but somehow her face kept returning to his thoughts. Her voice, soft, calm and kind, had left a strange peace in his heart. When he reached the market road, his car slowed down near the bridge. Then he saw her again. Amara was helping an old woman cross the busy street. One hand held the woman's arm, the other balanced a basket of maize on her head. The cars passed close, but she didn't seem afraid. Her smile never left her face. Juma parked by the roadside and watched in silence. He had seen many people in his life, rich, powerful, proud, but few had the quiet strength she carried. When the old woman reached the other side safely, Amara returned to her small fire. Juma stepped out of his car and approached her. She looked up, surprised but pleased. "Ah, it is you again, sir," she said with a grin. "This time you did not bring the rainwater with your car." Juma laughed for the first time in many days. "No, not today," he said warmly. "I came to buy some maize, if you will sell me some." Amara handed him one roasted cob, still hot from the fire. "This one is the best," she said proudly. "For my favorite customer." He took it and tasted it. It was simple, but it felt like the most honest thing he had eaten in a long time. "You make it with care," he said. "That makes it special." They stood talking for a while. Juma asked her about her life, where her family was, how long she had been on the streets. Amara's smile faded slightly, but her voice stayed calm. She told him how she had lost her parents to illness when she was 12, how she had learned to survive by selling maize, washing clothes, and sleeping wherever she could find shelter. "I used to think the world was cruel," she said softly. "But I learned that if you stop being kind, you lose yourself completely. So I smile. Even when it's hard." Juma listened quietly. Her words touched him deeply. For a man who had everything, he suddenly felt small, because this girl who had almost nothing had a heart stronger than most people he knew. He looked around and said, "You shouldn't eat here by the dust and smoke. Come with me. Let's have a real meal." Amara hesitated. She wasn't used to such offers. "Sir, I am not used to big places," she said shyly. "They look at me like I don't belong." Juma smiled kindly. "You belong anywhere you walk with honesty," he said. So she agreed. They walked to a small restaurant nearby. People stared, a rich man in a fine suit and a girl in worn clothes sitting together, but Juma didn't care. He asked for 2 plates of rice and stew. When the food came, Amara looked at the clean plate, the glass of juice, and her eyes filled with quiet wonder. It had been years since she had eaten like that. They talked as they ate. Amara spoke about her dreams, not of riches or fancy things, but of having a small stall where she could sell food safely under her own roof. "I just want to build something that no one can take from me," she said. Juma nodded slowly. "That is a dream worth building," he said. As they talked, he began to see something he had never seen before, not just kindness but wisdom. She spoke with the kind of strength that came from surviving hardship, from knowing pain yet still choosing hope. When the meal was over, Juma paid the bill and stood up. "Thank you for sharing your story," he said. "You remind me of something I forgot, how to see people, not just things." Amara smiled, her eyes bright. "Thank you for seeing me, sir," she said softly. As she walked back to her small shelter, she felt light inside. For the first time in a long while, someone had listened, truly listened, without pity or judgment. And for Juma, as he drove away, he knew his day had changed. The busy city no longer looked the same. Somewhere between the noise and the dust, he had found something pure, the heart of a girl who had nothing, yet gave everything through her kindness. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was only the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. The days in Kifaru grew brighter for Amara. Her small life began to change, quietly but beautifully. Mr. Juma often passed by her roadside spot, no longer just as a customer but as a friend. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes books, and sometimes just a kind word. The people around them started to notice. With his help, Amara moved from her broken shelter into a small, clean room near the market. It was nothing grand, but to her, it felt like a palace. For the first time in years, she could lock her own door, sleep under a roof, and wake up to sunlight instead of dust. Juma also helped her join a local baking class, where she learned to make bread, cakes, and pastries. Amara worked hard. She was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. The smell of fresh bread made her heart warm. Each loaf she baked reminded her that her hands, once used for survival, were now creating something new. Sometimes when she looked at Juma, she couldn't understand why he helped her so much. He was rich, respected, and busy, yet he found time for her. When she asked, he only said, "Helping someone is like planting a seed. One day the fruit grows for both of us." But not everyone saw his kindness the same way. In Juma's world, whispers began to rise like smoke. His business friends teased him. "You, Juma, the great businessman, spending time with a street girl?" one said with a laugh. "What will people think?" Another said, "Be careful, Juma. Poor people only love your money." Juma listened but said nothing. He had learned long ago that people talked most when they understood least. Still, the whispers found their way to Amara. Some women in the market started calling her Madam Beggar. Others laughed when she passed. One afternoon, she overheard 2 of Juma's employees mocking her. "Soon the boss will realize what she really is," one said. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She looked around her small room and felt like the walls were closing in. She remembered the bridge, the dust, and the nights she had slept hungry. What if all this kindness disappeared one day? What if Juma realized she wasn't good enough for his world? When he came to visit the next evening, he found her quiet and distant. She avoided his eyes. Finally, she said softly, "Mr. Juma, I think I should stop seeing you." He frowned, surprised. "Why would you say that?" Amara sighed. "Because your friends laugh at me. They say I don't belong in your world. Maybe they are right. You are a man of high places and I come from the street." Juma looked at her for a long time before speaking. "Amara," he said gently, "do you know why I come to see you?" She shook her head. "Because when everyone else looks up, you look around. You see people. You smile when others frown. You gave me something that money never could, peace. You belong anywhere your heart leads you, not where others tell you to stand. Amara's eyes filled with tears. She had never been spoken to like that. His words were not grand, but they were true and they touched her deeply. Over the next few weeks, Amara found her strength again. She focused on her baking, learning new recipes and saving her small earnings. The townspeople began to notice her talent. Her cakes were simple but delicious, and her customers always left smiling. Slowly she began to believe in herself again. But one day while cleaning her small room she found an old photograph wrapped in cloth, a picture of her parents. She sat on the floor and cried softly, remembering the night they were taken away by illness, leaving her alone. That pain was still buried deep inside her, like a shadow she never faced. When Juma visited that evening he saw her tears. She told him everything, her childhood, her parents' death, the hunger, the nights under the bridge. She even told him about the people who laughed at her now. Juma listened silently, his face filled with sorrow. You have carried so much, Amara, he said. But you never let it turn you cold. That is strength. He then shared something he had never told anyone, how he too had grown up poor, selling fruits on the roadside before success found him. Maybe that's why I noticed you, he said. You remind me of who I used to be, before money made people forget how to care. That night, as Amara walked him to the door, she felt something new, not just gratitude but hope. A part of her heart that had been locked for years began to open. Days passed and the gossip around them slowly faded. People began to respect Amara's determination. She worked hard, never showing pride or shame. And Juma kept visiting her bakery, not as a rich man doing charity, but as a man who had found a kind soul in the middle of the city's noise. The world around them still judged, still whispered, but inside their hearts, something stronger than gossip was quietly growing. It wasn't just kindness anymore. It was trust. It was something that no rumor, no pride, no wealth could ever destroy. Amara's life slowly began to change like the sunrise after a long dark night. The smell of fresh bread and warm cakes filled her small bakery every morning. Her hands, once used to beg or sell maize by the street, now worked with purpose. She kneaded dough, mixed sugar, and shaped her dreams with every loaf she baked. Juma had helped her rent a small space in the market and even paid for a signboard that read Amara's Touch. The name was simple, but to Amara, it carried her story, a reminder that even hands once covered in dust could create sweetness. At first, the people of Kifaru only came out of curiosity. Some wanted to see the street girl, who had caught a rich man's attention. Others came because they had heard her cakes were soft and sweet. But soon people began to return, not for gossip but for the taste. Her cakes were made with care, her prices fair, and her smile never faded. One afternoon, an old woman who used to mock her at the market walked into the shop. She looked shy and said, "Child, do you have that banana cake I heard about?" Amara smiled and handed her a piece, refusing to take any money. The old woman tasted it and nodded. "Now I see why people come here," she said quietly. From that day she became one of Amara's regular customers. Each morning Amara woke before sunrise, swept the shop floor, lit her small oven and prayed silently. "May my work feed not just bodies but hearts," she whispered. She believed that kindness was the secret ingredient in everything she baked. Juma visited often, sometimes bringing supplies, sometimes just sitting by the counter as Amara worked. He never treated her as someone below him. Instead, he spoke to her as an equal, respecting her hard work. He watched how she treated her customers, never rushing, never raising her voice. Even when someone complained or haggled, she stayed calm and smiled. "You handle people better than most business owners," Juma said one day watching her. Amara laughed softly. "When you've lived on the streets, you learn that people's moods change like weather. But kindness always stays warm." Her small business continued to grow. Soon she needed help to bake and sell. But instead of hiring strangers, she went back to the streets and found young girls who were living as she once had, lost, hungry, and alone. She took in 3 of them, Tina, Asha, and Lulu. They were shy at first, afraid to touch anything. Amara taught them patiently, showing them how to measure flour, mix ingredients, and bake with care. "Don't just make food," she told them. "Make people smile." In time the girls learned quickly and worked with joy. The shop became not just a bakery but a home. The laughter of the girls mixed with the smell of sugar and vanilla, filling the street outside with a sense of warmth. One day, as Amara watched the girls working, she realized she was no longer alone. She had turned her pain into purpose. The same streets that once made her cry now echoed with her success. Juma was proud of her. But more than pride, he felt something deeper: admiration. He saw how she used her success to lift others. Unlike many people he knew, she did not chase money for herself. Instead, she used it to give others a chance to rise. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange, Juma and Amara sat outside the shop. The market was quiet, and a cool breeze blew through the air. "You've done something beautiful, Amara," Juma said softly. "You've built more than a business, you've built hope." Amara smiled, her eyes gentle. "I just wanted to prove that even the broken can build something whole," she said. But not everyone was happy. A few traders in the market began to feel jealous of her growing success. They spread small lies, saying she was only rich because of Juma. Some even claimed she used tricks to make people like her. When Juma heard about it, he was angry, but Amara stopped him. "Let them talk," she said. "I have learned that truth speaks louder in silence. If I keep doing what is right, the lies will fade." Her words reminded him of something his mother once said: "A calm river carries more life than a noisy one." Days turned into weeks, and Amara's bakery became one of the most loved in the city. Even schools and offices began to order her cakes. People admired how she treated her workers like family. When one of the girls fell sick, Amara closed the shop early and stayed by her side until she recovered. The same community that once ignored her now called her Sister Amara. Her kindness touched many, even those who never met her in person. Juma's heart swelled with pride whenever he heard her name spoken with respect. He knew he had seen something special in her from the very beginning. Her journey had changed not just her life but his too. He had once believed success was built only with money and power. Now he understood it was built with compassion and purpose. One night, as he watched her teach Lulu how to frost a cake, he thought, "This woman rose from the dust, but she shines brighter than gold." The next morning, Amara stood outside her shop, watching the girls set up the trays. She looked at the street that had once been her home. A few of her old friends still lived there, sleeping on cardboard, dreaming of change. Amara took a deep breath and said quietly, "If I could rise, they can too." And so, she decided to expand her bakery, not for profit but to give more people a chance. She wanted Amara's touch to become a place where lost souls could find hope, where broken dreams could be repaired with flour, sugar, and love. As she opened her shop that day, the first customer was a small boy carrying an empty basket. "Auntie Amara," he said shyly, "my mother has no food today." Amara smiled, wrapped a loaf of bread and handed it to him. "Tell your mother to come tomorrow," she said. "There is work here if she wants it." And when the boy ran off happily, Juma, who had been watching from his car, whispered to himself, "This is what true wealth looks like." Amara had risen from the dust, but she had not forgotten where she came from. Her story had become a light for others, a reminder that kindness, once planted, could grow into something more powerful than gold or fame. Her name spread across Kifaru, not as a girl from the street, but as a woman who taught the city what it meant to rise with grace. The morning sun shone brightly over Kifaru as the city gathered to celebrate something special. A second branch of Amara's touch was opening, and the street that once echoed with her struggles now echoed with joy. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air, and colorful ribbons danced in the wind. Children clapped, traders smiled, and music played softly in the background. Amara stood in front of her new bakery, dressed in a simple yellow dress. Her eyes sparkled with pride, but also with humility. She looked around and saw familiar faces, the market women who once pitied her, the young girls she had trained, and even the little boy she had once fed on a hungry afternoon. They were all there, smiling at her. Juma stood beside her, wearing a neat white shirt and a warm smile. He had helped her every step of the way, but today he wanted the world to see that Amara was the reason everything had grown. "You did this, Amara," he whispered. "You turned pain into power." Amara smiled softly. "We did it together, Juma. You believed in me when no one else did." Before the ribbon cutting, Amara asked everyone to bow their heads for a short prayer. "I was once a girl with nothing," she said gently. "I slept on these same streets. But today I stand here because of kindness, hard work, and faith. This bakery is not just mine, it belongs to every child who dreams, every person who refuses to give up." The crowd clapped and tears rolled down many faces. Some of the older traders who had once mocked her wiped their eyes quietly. They now understood what true strength looked like. When Amara cut the ribbon, cheers filled the air. The crowd pushed forward to taste the first cakes from the new bakery. The aroma of chocolate and honey spread through the air, and people said, "No one bakes with a heart like Amara." As the day went on, Amara moved from table to table, greeting people and serving them with her usual warmth. Juma watched her with admiration, seeing the same light in her that had caught his attention the day she smiled at him by the roadside, wet and calm after he had splashed water on her. He remembered that smile and how it had changed his life. He was a man who once believed happiness came from wealth, but Amara had taught him that true joy came from giving. When the crowd began to quiet down, Juma stepped forward and asked for everyone's attention. The market music faded and all eyes turned toward him. He took Amara's hand gently. "Amara," he said softly, "when I first met you, you had nothing but your smile. Yet that smile had more strength than all my riches. You showed me what it means to live with purpose, with heart and with grace. You built something beautiful from the dust. And now, before everyone here, I want to ask you something." The crowd grew silent. Amara looked up at him, her heart racing. Juma continued, "You once had nothing, yet you gave everyone hope. Now let me give you my heart." Gasps and cheers filled the air. The people of Kifaru clapped and shouted with joy. Amara's eyes filled with tears as she covered her mouth in surprise. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then, smiling through her tears, she nodded. "Yes, Juma," she whispered. "I will walk this journey with you." The crowd cheered louder. Drums began to play and the children danced around them. It wasn't a grand wedding or a fancy proposal. It was pure, simple, and full of love. The kind of love that grew from respect, not wealth. From that day on, Amara and Juma became not just partners in business but in life. Together, they decided to dedicate part of their earnings to helping street children, the ones who slept under bridges and begged by the market, just as Amara once had. They opened a small shelter called the Home of Hope. Every evening, Amara would visit to teach the children how to bake, read, and write. Juma managed the finances and made sure they had enough supplies. "Food fills the stomach," Amara often told the children, "but kindness fills the soul." The shelter soon became known across Kifaru as a place of light. Children who once wandered aimlessly now had dreams, to become bakers, teachers, and even business owners. One night, as Amara stood outside watching the children play, Juma came beside her. "You've changed so many lives," he said softly. Amara looked up at the stars and replied, "It wasn't just me, Juma. It was all of us, everyone who believed that even the smallest kindness can change the world." He smiled and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Still," he said, "you're the heart of it all. You taught this city to love again." The bakery and the shelter grew together, side by side. Every time Amara baked, she remembered her old life, the hunger, the cold nights, the loneliness. But instead of pain, she felt gratitude. Those hard days had shaped her into who she was now. Sometimes, when she visited the old bridge where she once slept, she would leave a loaf of bread there, a silent message to her past self. "You made it," she would whisper. Years later, the people of Kifaru spoke of Amara and Juma not just as successful bakers, but as givers of life. Their story became a lesson passed from one generation to another. Parents told their children, "Do not look down on the poor, for tomorrow they may be the ones to lift you." Teachers told their students, "Work hard but never forget kindness." And the elders said, "The girl who had nothing gave the city everything." As time went on, Amara's touch became a symbol of hope, a reminder that love built on dignity and kindness could change the world. Amara and Juma never lived like royalty, but their hearts were rich beyond measure. They continued to work side by side, smiling at each other every morning, grateful for the journey that had brought them together. And when people saw them walking through the market hand in hand, they whispered with respect, "That is what true love looks like, love with dignity." And so, in the heart of Kifaru, the story of the homeless girl and the millionaire lived on, not as a tale of luck but as a story of faith, hard work, and the kind of love that builds, heals, and gives back.